I'm here with Ron Houvener,
Yes.
and he runs sound for
Alice Cooper.
Awesome. Okay. My first question, and this is usually typically how I start this off, is
Okay.
how'd you get into running sound? What got that sparkle, twinkle in your eye? Did you come out of the womb like
Yes.
with faders and like ready to go?
It started in high school. In high school, I was the techie geek that was always backstage at doing whatever I could get my hands on.
Me too.
I ended up somehow doing sound for a wedding band when I was they had to come pick me up to take me to rehearsals because I couldn't even drive yet. I feel like 15.
Do you remember the console?
It was I don't remember if it was a Ramza or a Soundcraft. It was just a little like 16 channel analog. This is way before digital. This is 80s. And then it was time to go to college, and I had no idea what step to take. There were a couple of sound engineering courses way back then, but they weren't.
Well, even still today, there's not a bunch of sound.
There weren't.
There's
a lot,
some,
and they were
but
really expensive.
I can't even imagine in the '80s how.
No, it was. I think I'm not even sure if Full Sail was started yet. I mean, it was. Yeah, I can't think of any of that back then. But
you definitely have to grind and like figure it out yourself. And
so I didn't know what to do. So I knew I had to go to college. Went to the local Western Michigan University and declared myself a music major because I didn't know what else to declare myself. And it just so happened that School of Music, they'd had a recording studio that they had mothballed like years earlier.
No
In
way.
my first year of school, they opened it back up. And so they were just starting. So there was only like one or two classes in it. You couldn't major in it. But so, and I didn't know about my first semester, but I was immediately in there on my second semester, which led to me being an assistant engineer on a project for the school's vocal jazz group.
Okay.
Which led to me being on their tech crew, which led to me working backstage at the big 3,500 seat Roadhouse on campus, which led to, it just kept leading to other things.
That's awesome.
And here we are. So.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's fill in the gap for me a little bit of you are running sound, you're doing it at the college. I'm sure you didn't just walk off that campus and go straight onto Alice Cooper.
No.
Tell me about that story a little bit.
It started again. Back then it was meeting the right people, proving yourself, meeting the right people, proving yourself. So I started doing sound at the local clubs.
Told you. Told you every time this happens. This video is brought to you by... wait, hold on. This video is brought to you by... God dang it. This video is brought to you by SKB. SKB sent me cases for all my gear, so when you're ready to upgrade your tour cases, check out SKB.
So through other people that were involved there at the recording studio and with the vocal jazz group, I met a guy that owned a local sound company, started doing sound at some of the local clubs and some small little festivals. And then he introduced me to a guy that had a bigger company that was, back then, fairs and festivals were pretty big back early 90s.
Yeah.
So that's where I cut my teeth with national acts. I was 21 years old.
Point. I didn't think about that till just now. That was huge in the 90s, and it's kind of dropped off now.
I think all the casinos building theaters kind of killed it off a little bit. But.
Oh my goodness. What a good point. I never thought about that till just now. Okay, so sorry, you're doing fairs and festivals.
So early 90s, I'm doing fairs and festivals. I'm 21 years old and out there, and we're doing all these national acts.
Yeah.
And, I felt secure working for a company. I I was a little afraid of stepping out and working for a band.
Yeah.
Because I was afraid, well, what happens if the band doesn't work? Or so in that, I had job offers to start touring with these bands, and I kept saying no. Eventually, got married, came off the road for 10 or 12 years. Actually, I stepped away completely to try and have that normal life, and then got divorced and came right back into it because it was just it's in my blood. It's what I wanted to do. I couldn't find anything else that gave me this kind of satisfaction. But during that 10 years I was out, that's when digital consoles took over. That's when line arrays took over. I had to relearn everything when I came back.
It's interesting that you waited, because the people who ask me about this and how did I do it, and I think there's the right place, right time, but there's also the third thing of you need to having the ability to give them what they need at that time too. It's like that luck favors the prepared type thing. And there's some people who jump into this and try to I want to be on tour, and they jump into it, and then they can't handle it, and they're not prepared for it. Obviously, there's a bunch of unknown variables that happen with it, but that's really smart. So let me ask you this: coming from studio side to going to live, what is the biggest difference, and what is the opposite? That was the same that maybe you didn't expect.
Yeah, it's been so long. I mean, I honestly hasn't stepped foot in a recording studio since my college days because I honestly didn't have the patience for it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Right, because we would sit there at this console, and it was, again, we're analog console. We have marks next to all the faders that go, okay, at this measure, you have to move the fader this much. And we would sit there and just fine-tune the same song for days.
Yeah.
And I felt like I couldn't do it. It's that immediate gratification from doing live sound. Something comes out and it sounds amazing and the crowd goes nuts.
Yeah.
It's now. Right.
I do love that too, because how do you know when a song's done when you're editing it? You could be on it for...
We could just keep going and going and going.
Whereas here we're starting, you have a beginning, you have a middle, the end, and let's go.
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's what got me. That's that rush, I guess, is what I get a rush from it.
Yeah. So. I think my favorite part was honestly too that no matter how bad of a day I was having, there's that moment before the show, and I always got the little bit of jitters, but if it was frustrating, I look around and there's thousands of people and you're making their world and being a part of that is just, it feels surreal, honestly.
Yes.
So Alice Cooper specifically, how'd you get connected with these guys?
When I came back into the business and was learning things, there was a regional company back home that wanted to expand and grow into a touring company.
Yeah.
And so it just happened, I was coming back in. They found out I was coming back in, and they said, how about you come work for us and help us grow? And so I was working for this regional company, and we kept doing a lot of racks and stacks dates for Alice Cooper. And they liked what we did, so we became their provider. And so I've actually been touring with Alice for 10 years. Wow. But a lot of that was as the system engineer.
Sure. Oh, that's so cool.
And then the engineer before me was Greg Price. And this is, I can't thank Greg enough for this, because still, even at my age now, I was still gun shy about working for a band.
Yeah.
I liked the security of working for a company. Even though I prefer mixing over doing the system stuff, it was a security thing, right? And Greg put me, when Greg got the Metallica gig, he kind of put me in a position where he actually went to management and said, you need to hire this guy to take my place, before anybody even asked me if I wanted it.
Coming from Greg, that's awesome.
So he put me in this place where, shit.
Yeah.
I can't say no to this.
Yeah.
And I can't thank him enough for doing that. I would have never done it if I hadn't been put in that position. I'm so glad I did.
Oh my gosh. And what a cool, coming from SE to front of house, you get such a unique perspective of the system and the intricacies of it, and tuning it to a room, which is one of the most important pieces to having this translate well. If that's not set up, you're going to be chasing your tail all day long with this. Do you feel like that helped a bit being an SE first?
It did. I feel like I like having a grasp of the full picture from beginning to end.
Yeah.
It took me a little bit. I was a little bit of a control freak at first because I still wanted to be involved in shooting the room and setting the angles, and I had to make myself back off a little bit.
Yeah.
But I was a little bit of a control freak at first. But I'm good just letting them do their thing. But
I did another interview with Arpad, and he was SE beforehand. I'll put a link down below if people want to watch that. But he was also a systems engineer for so long, and then later in his career went to front of house for Chris Stapleton, which is so cool. But it also was really cool to see his relationship with his SE as well. And they have a really cool, because he knows how to speak that lingo because he comes from that world.
And you work well together when you understand what the other's dealing with.
Yeah. And honestly, it's not bad to have to be, I want to say demanding. I think people confuse it with being demanding and knowing what you want.
Right.
And then how to communicate what you want. And then trusting that they'll do that.
Right.
So with running front of house for Alice Cooper, a lot of their music was recorded back way beyond. And the technology has so far advanced from them. How do you pay homage to something that is completely sonically different from before? Do you try to match that sound from before, or do you try to bring it to the new age with, obviously you're using a SXL.
Right. The guitar tones and the tone of the drum kit don't match what was being recorded back then. So I guess I'm staying more true to what the band is giving me than trying to make it something different.
That'd be tough for me, because I'd be in a headspace almost to listening, because you prep for gigs, you listen to the bands, and you get this idea for it, but something that's been so long ago, how do you not try to, I don't want to say make it sound less good, because it wasn't bad back then, but is it just a completely different time frame?
Right. I mean, I do try and layer things the way they were layered in the recordings. You know, where Alice's voice is and where the drum is and I do try and stack things up, so to speak, the way they were. Yeah. But in terms of tonality, it would actually be hard to take what the band is. The band is giving me modern tones. Yeah. And then to try and make that sound old. Yeah. I like that. So you're just translating what you're hearing on stage and make that as much possible. You know, I think one thing that I've noticed with the major engineers and what separated the good from the greats is that they're more into source tone and microphone and getting that fixed before you go way down the chain and try to plug it in at the back end and make it fit. And don't get me wrong, there's people that do clubs and they have to do damage control, and that's all they're doing is damage control with that. So I guess one of my questions I ask is, I don't see a bunch, if any, outboard gear here. No. Is that by design of high speed, low drag? Are you using, I see you are using waves. I think one cool thing with a lot of the plugins is that it gives you ability to try things out to where you wouldn't have been able to try, you know, a Fairchild. But for new engineers, it can seem daunting because there's a ton of stuff. What's your advice to people maybe just starting out and dipping their toes? Because I've seen people, and I've done this before, especially early in my career, was I would do the mix and I'd be heavy into EQing it, and then I'd do plugins because I can, and I just added so much, and it seems like the simplicity of bring it back and just do sprinkles. What's your advice to those people that are just I want to play with it, but where do I even go? It's really easy to put yourself in a really deep hole. Yeah. Because one plugin might do this really cool thing, but it brings this tone that you don't quite like. So then you add this other plugin that kind of fixes that, but then it just, I've seen guys with layers and layers and layers of plugins, and they've just buried themselves. Yeah. And in the end, it could have even sounded better before they start. I tend to keep things pretty simple. Yeah. Yes, I'm using plugins, but it's nothing extreme. Nothing. Some vocal effects and some gates and maybe some active EQ. It's. I think what people forget too is that each plugin you're adding more noise and more and latency
gain with it. Yeah. So with all those with the plugins that you do use, when you start a new prepping for a new tour, do you start from scratch or do you start from old file and build off that, or do you kind of reset it to kind of?
I start with my old file, and I just try and think what wasn't I happy with, because our band doesn't change. We might get a new set, they might change the set list for the year, but it's going to be a lot of the same stuff. It's
Sure.
going to be the same band. And I'm just gonna think what wasn't I happy with?
Yeah.
What can I get rid of? Because I am a little bit of a minimalist with the plugins. I mean, I started in the analog world where you had 3 effects and 8 compressors in your rack, and you had to make that work, right? Yeah. And now you have all this, and I think it can be too much.
Okay, so starting from the SE side and going to the front of house side, what advice would you give to SEs either touring right now that would, or ones that are just starting, that would immediately make their lives easier?
You know what a lot of people don't do is the bands, you know, if it's an actual tour, not just one-offs or whatever, the band's engineer and the system engineer need to have a conversation up front. What does the front of house guy expect? What's he looking for? That doesn't happen a lot of times.
Really? That's smart.
But I think it definitely needs to happen. These 2 guys have to work side by side.
Yeah.
To make something happen, and they should be on the same page. You know, if everybody knows what's expected in the end, it's just so much easier to work for it.
Sure. So clear expectations through it.
Yeah.
Wow. With touring is a crazy lifestyle. It's kind of a surreal one where there's just so much stuff going on all the time. And went from waking up in a bus to walking out, there's just constant movement and constant noise. How do you quiet the noise?
I've toured with people that say I'm probably one of the most zen people they know.
Some people just thrive in it, honestly, but I think there's times you need to kind of find your own center.
I thrive in the constant motion, but I'm pretty laid back and kind of relaxed about it. I'm not like all worked up and on edge. We'll go from 8 a.m. to midnight or later, and you're constantly doing stuff. But I don't know. I just kind of go with it.
What's the best concert you've ever been to?
Oh, that's hard. You know which one I really enjoyed? This might be a little off, but Ringo Starr and his all-star band.
Really?
Because those guys were just love and performance, and it came through. It wasn't all about the effects and big production. This was just some great guys. I mean, not just Ringo, but guys from like Toto and all these other bands, and they just loved performing, and it just came through. It had an energy to it that I really loved. It was fun.
Who are some of the engineers that you look up to?
Cookie and Pooch, obviously. I loved working with, because Cookie was another one that was an SE for a long, long time.
Yeah.
He was Pooch's SE.
Yeah.
Right? And now he's front of house for Styx. And I had opportunities to work with Cookie as his SE for a couple of, one-offs when they weren't carrying PA. And you learn so much from the guy.
Yeah.
He's full of information.
Yeah.
And now he's doing amazing as a front of house guy. I really look up to him, and Greg Price, of course.
Yeah.
Brad Maddox is another one I got to work with as his SE that just did a great job as engineer. I learned a lot from all of them.
Now, with mixing, maybe you can speak to this a little bit from being an SE, but how do you create space EQ-wise for different instruments without ruining the tonality of possibly that instrument? Because sometimes it will sound good just by itself.
Yes.
But then in the context of the whole band, you don't want to layer it up. Do you kind of maybe trim off some of that to make it fit the whole?
Because we've got 3 guitars.
Yeah.
And it's not like one is just a rhythm guitar. They all take leads.
Yeah.
Tommy does more of the rhythm stuff.
Yeah.
He does more of the chunky stuff. So I let his guitar goes lower and gets a little more of that low mid stuff to fill in.
Yep.
Ryan is is labeled the lead guitar, and he's got more of the traditional lead guitar tone.
Yep.
So tone-wise, he's kind of more in the middle, and then Nita does all the high-pitched noodling stuff. So I let her guitar go a little higher.
Yeah.
Plus, I keep Ryan and Tommy panned, not 100%, but
Sure.
a little bit.
Sure.
And then when they do solos, they come back to center. So there's a little space,
Sure.
spatially, but then I try and EQ them all a little different, just to try and get different parts of the spectrum.
Is there any other things you do, any spatial stuff with?
Other than the typical drum stuff, no.
Okay.
I mean, and that's really all we have. It's drums, 3 guitars, and a bass, and then the vocals.
All right, walk us through the layout of your console, if you don't mind, and how it's set up.
Okay, so my show layer, I mostly work off the VCAs. I have access to some of my groups down here. I've got my drum groups and the bass and background vocals and Alice's subgroup. And then I've got like individual guitars and individual bass channels here. But mostly my VCAs, I've got Alice in the background vocals, the 3 guitars, and then, kick, snare, toms, and brass. And I can mix most of it. The only thing I have to change layers for during the show is if there's something on the drum kit specifically I need to change.
Now, are you an effects send, effects return guy?
I am. Yeah, so I've got some aux groups going to the effects. And I do have some custom layer steps, like background vocals. I can go to the background vocals real quick. I've got the individual background vocal channels and their effects channel right there.
Okay.
Or like on the SXL, like anybody knows, you can just quickly select something if you need to bring an effect up there.
What's going to happen is I'm going to pop these pictures up on the screen, but I'm going to show you some of your photos from Instagram. And can you explain what's going on in the photo?
Okay.
All right. First one is this one.
Oh, that was beautiful. We did Jazz Fest in Montreux. That's Lake Geneva. And the stage, obviously the front of the stage is on solid ground, but it's built out over the water. And it was one of the most beautiful places we played all summer. It was gorgeous.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, next one is this.
Oh, that's in Berlin, obviously.
Yeah.
That's Checkpoint Charlie.
Okay, did you go through the checkpoint yourself?
Oh, it was a day off. I was just walking around, and there it was.
That's awesome. That is really cool. What is this?
Oh, I freelance for Claire when I'm not out with Alice, and I'm kind of like relief system guy for WWE. So like WWE, those guys work 52 weeks a year. They'd like a little time off.
Yeah.
They don't always work. So when I get home, I'll give them my availability, and I'll go out once in a while and give somebody a day off.
What a cool environment to work in.
That was Raw in Philadelphia this last year.
All right, ready for another one?
Okay.
What is going on there?
No idea. That was last summer. I think that was New Mexico or Arizona, someplace. We pulled up and they had these hay bales sitting in the loading dock, painted up, "Welcome Alice Cooper." How could you not take a picture of that?
Okay, one more. Or I got 2 more left. I got this. What the heck is going on there?
I think it was 2 years ago.
Okay.
Alice doesn't do, in the 10 years I've been touring with them, I think this is maybe only the second, maybe the first. We did a private Halloween party for somebody in New Orleans.
Whoa.
I don't know where the guy got his money, obviously, but he also, one of his side projects is he owned like a animatronics business that did like, so here's a guy that owns an animatronics business having a Halloween party where Alice Cooper is the entertainment.
Oh,
so
cool.
Obviously he's got these like huge, crazy Halloween things going on.
Oh my gosh. All right, I got one last one. It happened to be your first ever Instagram photo.
Okay. Oh.
What's the story behind that?
That was just a day off. I want to say that was in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
Katie was our lighting tech. Stephanie was my PA tech with me. And we were just out wandering around the city all day. We ended up sitting there having a drink. And Stephanie took a picture.
Awesome. What is one piece of advice you'd give to new engineers that would want to one day be in your position?
My biggest career regret was fear. I felt secure working for these other companies, not stepping out, doing what I truly wanted to do. You don't hold yourself back. Just step out there and do it.
So good. Oh, it's so good.
You know, I can't believe I'm in my 50s and I'm finally just now doing what I wanted to do my whole life. I was just afraid to step out and do it.
That's so good. I love that. Any other questions you think you want to talk about before?
No.
Okay.
I can't think of anything.
If people want to follow you and follow your career, where can they follow you at?
I don't post a lot. You didn't have to go back very far to find that very first post, probably.
No, I didn't.
I think it's just Ron Houvener.
Okay.
On Instagram.
Cool.
Or Facebook, but I don't,
Awesome.
I post once in a while.
Or come to an Alice Cooper show near you. Come over here, poke him with a stick, throw a drink at. No, don't do that. Please don't do that. But thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you.
I truly appreciate it.
Thank you.